Celebrate Houston's Asian and Asian American communities at Asia Society Texas's free night market. Eat, shop, and explore at the festival's outdoor market of 70 plus local vendors and enjoy live music, a beer garden, carnival games, and dance performances for all ages. I can't wait for this one night only night market on Friday, November 1st at Asia Society Texas in the Museum District. Learn more at asiasociety.org/Texas. Today on CityCast Houston, it's Halloween, so for the spookiest time of the year, we thought we'd bring back a certified H-Town ghost story. This actually happened to local playwright Brandon Bork-Shiel, so he's going to share his haunting with us. Get ready for some story time chills. It's Thursday, October 31st. I'm Raheel Ramzanali, and here's what Houston's talking about.
My name is Brendan Bork-Shiel, and this story is called Wicked Peak. When I was 18 and just about to move out of my mom's apartment in the Woodlands, Texas, we started hearing this knocking sound in the walls every night. It would wake us up around 3 in the morning, we'd trace it to my mom's closet, we'd open the closet door, and the knock would fade to silence. The morning after night number 3 of this, my mom said with a little excitement, "I think we have a ghost." This, by the way, was not at all out of the realm of normal stuff for her to say. My mom was a witch. She was part of a coven in the 80s during the heyday of Dianic Wicca, which is basically the intersection of magic and second-wave feminism. But after 20-ish years apart from the coven, she'd spun off into her own very idiosyncratic belief system. She would tell stories about conversations she'd had with trees and fairies and prehistoric humans, and half of these stories happened while she was high on MDMA, and in her mind, that made them more credible, not less. She watched shows like Ghost Hunter, Crossing Over, The Dead Files, Kindred Spirits, and Long Island Medium, and believed in them more than she believed in the news. Ghosts were not only real to her, at this point in her life, they were like most of her reality. In my mom's eyes, all of you listening are just a bunch of pre-ghosts waiting to hatch in some dark trench of the Dead Sea that is existence. So, as far as she was concerned, there was no other explanation for the sound in the walls. It was a ghost knocking, and it was going to keep knocking until we answered the metaphysical door. So that evening, around sunset, she asked me to join her in the living room for a ritual. We cleansed the space by lighting candles and spreading salt water. We cast a circle, which basically means calling on different guardian spirits to protect and focus your magical work. I myself had a mixed bag of feelings about the whole situation. When I'd been younger, I used to hang on to every word of my mom's ghost stories, and while I'd done solstice and equinox rituals with her before, this was my first time being invited to participate in a ghost encounter, so the little kid in me was pretty stoked. But at some point, I'd hit the teenage rebellion phase, and when your mom's a hippy-dippy counterculture radical, the only direction you have to go in is to become a wet blanket skeptic. So I'd spent the last 4 years kind of being the Agent Scully to her Mulder, and this whole seance bothered me on principle. Still, I stuck with it, curious to see how it all would play out, and whether I'd gotten the ghost whisperer gene or not. If you're picturing what we were doing here as some kind of exorcism, that really wasn't the mood. It was more like an intervention. We would listen to the ghost, then tell it how it was making us feel, and end with a firm but loving ultimatum. In Mom's ghost stories, the ghost always leaves in peace. So, there we are, circle cast, waiting in silence, during which I thought we were supposed to be meditating, maybe dialing into some spiritual wavelength where you're able to discourse with the dead. But then suddenly my mom was like, yeah, the way you do in the middle of a conversation, and I realized, oh man, the ghost is already here, they started without me. And I tried harder to concentrate and see if I could get some clairvoyant flash of revelation, but I was getting nothing, except the occasional, yeah, from my mom. From my end, it felt like babysitting someone on LSD, like here was Mom right next to me having this vivid experience all to herself. And maybe it was the feeling of exclusion that sent me over the edge, but I started to lightly heckle the seance. Every time Mom said, I would tag onto it something like, yes, quite so. My mom, probably in an effort to politely shut me up, let me in on what she was seeing. A little girl in a pinafore dress. The girl, Mom told me, kept saying that she was lost on the way to a very important, very exciting party. And I'm not proud of this because it was disrespectful and not even a very good burn, but I said, little girl ghost? Kinda cliche. I don't remember it going on much longer. Within a couple minutes, whatever conversation my mom and the ghost were having had reached a point where Mom was saying stuff like, I hear you, I accept you, but now it's time to move on. She gently said a couple different versions of that message. And then I could tell by watching her, whatever conversation she was having had ended, and whoever she was talking to, real or imagined, was gone. And it was just us again, both kind of annoyed at each other. And that night, there was no more knocking sound. We never heard it again. Which I hate. So much. But I was at least glad to be done with the whole thing, or so I thought.
The Museum of Fine Arts Houston presents Living with the Gods, Arts, Beliefs, and Peoples. To celebrate its centennial, the museum has organized a once-in-a-lifetime exhibition that features extraordinary objects made by artists to communicate with their gods. Living with the Gods represents a vast array of religions and beliefs, with art created across cultures and across thousands of years. The 200 objects demonstrate the astonishing quality that artists have achieved when driven by passion and faith. Living with the Gods is on view from October 27th through January 20th, 2025. Visit mfah.org/livingwiththegods to learn more. That's mfah.org/livingwiththegods. Hey Houston, looking for some design inspiration? Check out the 2024 AIA Houston Home Tour. On November 2nd and 3rd, you'll get a rare chance to step inside some of the city's most stunning custom homes, all crafted by some of Houston's top architects. Whether you're dreaming up your own perfect space or just love exploring amazing designs like I do, this tour is a must. Each home is a masterpiece showcasing the collaboration between homeowners, architects, and builders. And the best part? You can chat with the architects right there on site, so you can get tips, ask questions, and soak up all the creative vibes. Don't miss out on this unique experience. To learn more or grab your tickets, just head over to architecturehouston.org. Again, that's architecturehouston.org. So mark your calendars November 2nd and 3rd and come join us for the AIA Houston Home Tour. You won't want to miss it. One thing I love about Houston is that it's full of amazing stories. Here's one that I just learned about. In 1940, a girl named Ruth Steinfeld and her family were deported from Germany to one of the first Nazi concentration camps in France. She and her sister managed to escape with the help of a rescue group, and Ruth ended up making a life here in Houston. Now her portrait is part of a new exhibit called Facing Survival by David Casson. The exhibit memorializes over 24 survivors at Holocaust Museum Houston, and they really make you think about the resiliency of the human spirit. Facing Survival is on view now through January 5th at Holocaust Museum Houston, and the museum is free on Thursdays from 2 to 5 p.m., and kids 18 and under and college students are always free at Holocaust Museum Houston. Learn more at hmh.org/Facing Survival.
Cut to 8 years later, and sorry in advance because this is where the story takes a turn from lighthearted ghost romp to something a little heavier. I'm 26 at this point, and my mom has recently died. I'm going through her old stuff. I turn on her computer and find that she was writing a book. It's sort of half memoir, half essays about her spiritual beliefs. There's a chapter about her coven and one about prehistorical aliens, and there's a chapter on this little girl she talked to back when I was 18. But in this manuscript, she's added in some details that she hadn't shared with me on the night it happened. Mom's book says that about halfway through the seance, she realized that little girl was her mother. Like, an innocent childhood piece of her mother. And in the moment I read that, I knew, whether there was really a ghost or not, this event had been a way bigger deal than I realized. It would be too much to get into my mom's whole relationship with her mother, who I will simply call Anne because I definitely never called her grandma. But just to give you a sense of their dynamic, my mom had this incredibly strong startle response. For her entire life, if you walked into a room and she didn't see you coming, there was literally no way to alert her to your presence without making her jump. And the reason her fight or flight had such a hair trigger is because of things that were done to her by Anne. Long before Anne died, she haunted my mom. Anne was probably a big part of why she believed in ghosts in the first place. The way Mom put it in her book was that seeing the little girl helped her remember Anne wasn't always a bad person, that somewhere early in Anne's life, some things had happened to her and she'd gotten stuck. And now, in the afterlife, Anne was finally unstuck and she got to start over as a little kid again. And my mom was able to feel happy for her in that moment. I did the math, and I realized this episode with the knocking sound and the ghost happened 6 months after Anne died. I've heard for a lot of people, grief reaches its peak at 6 months. And if that was Mom's peak of grieving Anne, I have to acknowledge, it was a pretty wicked peak. And look, if you asked me, do you really think there was a little kid knocking on the walls? I don't know. I tend to doubt it. But I do really think Mom saved herself hours of therapy with that ritual. Imagine the next time your past comes knocking, keeping you up at night. You could just light some candles, have a conversation with it, and then ask it to leave, and it actually would. Whether ghosts are real or not, I think that qualifies as magic.
That was local playwright Brandon Bork-Shield telling his very own, very true Halloween tale. And check out Grown Up Storytime, where Brandon first shared this story. We have that linked in our show notes. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it. Text it right now to 3 friends who love a good scary story, and leave us a rating and review. And if you're new here, please hit the subscribe button so we can share more great H-Town news and stories with you all year round. You can also sign up for our daily newsletter, Hey Houston, with a link in our show notes. That will do it for today. Stay safe and have fun out there this Halloween. I'm Raheel Ramzanali, and I hope you learned something new.